I'm Ankita. I am an HR business partner working with Amazon. I have been in the space of HR business partner for as long as I've been working. I had a short stint in learning and development in between. When I'm not at my day job, I enjoy writing everything about HR in my blog and then for a set of other websites. I'm super excited about this and I hope you are too. So, without any ado, let's just jump right into the questions. I see there are a couple already, so we'll get started with them. And of course, through the process, I'll share just my opinion on how interviewing works and some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So, our first question comes from Vasudha. So Vasudha asks, how will age career gap considered in interviews by companies? Is any weightage given at the mid senior level roles? Um, this is a frankly a good question because we talk about a lot of different kinds of diversity that we look for. You'll see a lot of companies say we're a young organization. We have young blood coming in, so ageism is a problem in certain aspects. It's a component of diversity not much talked about. So yes, if you are 40 plus or 45 plus, it becomes difficult to you know apply for roles which typically have people with lesser experience. However, your resume should speak for it. And also, if you're called for an interview, you should be able to talk about how open you are to work in the same industry and the same roles that you might find people of a younger age at. The reason, ageism exists is because a lot of people come in, see people who are younger than them working at the same level, at the same role, and then feel like they should be at a higher level. If that is not a problem for you, so for example, if you've taken a career break for a couple of years and you intend to return at, say, a junior to mid level, you should be clear about the fact to the interviewers that you are open to start again. So yes, age does become a very tricky situation when you start applying for roles. There are a few ways to get around this. One is by making your resume extremely strong. Talk about why your role or experience fits with what they're looking for. Uh, a lot of organizations do mask age, so I don't like while you could talk about date of birth in the resume, it's not expected, it's not encouraged. And you could talk about where you did your education from. You don't necessarily have to mention the years, right? So these are some of the aspects because those are not crucial and important to the job. Career break again. Uh, there are a lot of programs that organizations are now running, especially for women who've taken a break in their career. My recommendation is to look out for them. In fact, Jobs for Her does a great job by resurfacing those opportunities. Uh, those are the best places to get to, but I know a lot of organizations who ask you about why you've had a break in the career, and if you have a convincing answer and you've so it's not enough to have a convincing answer as to why you've taken a break in the career, but also have an answer for how you've been keeping up to date with the market while you were on break. That's really helpful because they may have concerns about, are you still relevant in the industry or not? It's great to come with a beginner mindset and a learning mindset saying that I will pick it up. But what helps is if you've already started delving, if you started reading what's new in your space and so on and demonstrating that. So that's my long drawn answer to the first question. We'll move to the second one. Preeti asks, how do companies look at a person who spent almost 20 years in the same company? Is this considered as negative in the interview? I don't think so. What is important is not how long you've spent with the company, but how long you've spent at a particular role, or how long have you been doing the same uh, job, right? So if you've been doing that for very long, then yes, people ask, uh, why is it that you've not, explored something new, have grown, and so on. So you can stay with an organization for 25 years, 50 years, it doesn't make a difference, but show how you've grown in the organization throughout. What are the different things you've learned? In fact, uh, and also have a good reason as to why you're looking for a different opportunity. Sometimes people, like a lot of organizations, have now stopped asking why are you looking for a change, but some still do. So try and have a better answer for that. We'll move to saying, Pariniti asks, what are the do's and don'ts for an interview? Uh, there are a few basic ones, and I've been interviewing a lot recently. Like I've been taking a lot of interviews, so I can tell you firsthand of the things that usually lead to a non-favorable impression. The most important thing is to really have your 3 or 5 things that you're really proud of, right? Know your top accomplishments and know all the details associated with that accomplishment. So I'll give you an example from one of the interviews I took. Right? Someone said that this designed a program which had 5 pillars of retention, and when I asked them what the 5 pillars were, they mentioned 4 of them and forgot the fifth one. Now, if that was your most significant achievement in the past few years, I would expect you to remember all the 5 pillars. If I ask you for numbers, you should have those at the tip of your hands. So ensure that you have details around everything that you've done. Um, and you don't have to go back like 5, 6 years back into the past to answer. You could pick up examples from your recent past. The second thing I would recommend is to not repeat examples. If you've had a career where you've demonstrated success in multiple aspects, for each question that you're asked, try and pick up a different example. The third thing I think which people don't do very well is ask questions. At the end of each interview, there is certain time allocated where you can ask the person who's interviewing you a few questions. Come up with fantastic questions. That is your time to demonstrate all the homework that you've done or any knowledge that you have regarding the industry and so on. So ask smart questions, use that time. Don't just say, can you tell me more about the role? If they tell you more about the role, ask, hey, I'm curious, what are the biggest problems that your team or the team that I'm interviewing for is facing right now? How do you expect an incumbent to come in and fit in? What are the top expectations from the incumbent? What if you know something about the industry, quote that and say, is it similar, or how is that impacting your sector at this point of time? So ask smart questions, get to know more about it. Shubhra asks, what are the things one should keep in mind before attending an interview? I think most part of it I've answered. Just prepare. I think a lot of people walk into interviews thinking, how difficult can it be? Spend some time thinking about it, going through your resume, going through the achievements that you have. It is also very helpful if you speak to someone about it. So if you think that these are my top 3 achievements, say that, hey, if I speak to you about it, does this sound like a big achievement? If it doesn't, what details can I add to it for it to sound like it is actually a big achievement, right? So those are the things you could do before attending an interview. be calm, don't get jittery or stressed. I know it's easier said than done, but yeah, I mean, just like if the more prepared you are, the easier it gets. And of course, the more interviews you've given, I'm guessing the next one gets easier. Um, mhm. Hamida, okay, there's a question saying that, Ankita, what are the things to keep in mind while answering? How do you answer the question, tell us about yourself in an interview, like from where and how exactly to start, and on what to end on? Um, so I personally never ask the question. The If the interviewer has done their homework, they've read your resume, then they will typically not ask you, tell us about yourself. But a lot of interviewers also ask it because it's a great icebreaker, right? It gets you flowing. The important part to remember is that in the tell us about yourself part of the interview, that is your opportunity to lead the conversation. So if there is a certain achievement that you are extremely proud of, or if you want the person to focus on, you should talk about it in that section, because then the interviewer picks up from there. So take for example, if you ask me what to talk about myself, I'll say, hey, this is what I currently do. I'll give a very short background of saying what I've done in my career history, and I'll obviously go in reverse chronological order and only go for about the past 2 or 3 jobs. You don't have to go through all of it. And then talk about what interests you, right? So, for example, I'll say that, hey, I've worked as an HR business partner at Amazon. I do blah, blah, blah. But that's my day job. And outside of my day job, I also write a lot about HR, and some of the topics that I enjoy writing about and have had the opportunity to work at Amazon on are things like X, Y, Z. And that is what you end it at. So when you do that, the person who's interviewing you will likely say, hey, can you tell me more about X? What did you do there? And then so on. So it makes for a very engaging conversation. It gives you the opportunity to lead the interview. Okay. The next question says, I am a fresher since I've completed my studies, been over 3 or 4 years, got many opportunities, also made it up to some, but because of far off place, didn't opt for. So suggest some tips on how I can do better in interviews, as I have not been working soon after my career. Happens. Sometimes people, and I think I would treat this very similar to taking a break, right? What is extremely important to put on your resume for even to get a call for an interview is to show what you have been doing in those 3 to 4 years. And especially in the interview, tell them about how you have maximized those 3 to 4 years, and that you've not just been sitting at home, or if you have been sitting at home, what has your experience taught you that could be relevant to the job, right? These are difficult questions to answer because it becomes very difficult to convince the person on the other side that you've been using the time fruitfully. So, uh, you sh- like if you've taken up any online courses to keep abreast with the industry, talk about that. If you've been doing any freelance consulting, make sure you mention that. If you've been picking up projects, internships, uh, talk about those and make those the focal points, because those are as important to your whole learning and experience journey as working in an industry. So it may not give you the exact same advantage, but it does show, how important it is for you. Okay, this is an interesting one. Jyoti asks, I have applied for a field service engineering job which requires more travel. How can I convince the employer in the interview that I'm interested to take the job? They will question me if I can travel more being a woman. These are, that's an extremely real scenario. In fact, uh, I can talk about, when I was sitting for interviews after college, I had a role with an organization which required me to work at the factory. I was super interested in it. I thought it was important, but the organization decided to go ahead with only um, male applicants. So, as much as I want to say that this is not true, it does happen a lot. It is not ideal, but there are two or three things that you could do to convince the organization that you really want the job, right? The first is pick up past instances of where you've had to travel, right? If your job required travel, tell them that, hey, this is what it does. Talk about what your travel constraints are if they exist. So talk about saying that, hey, I can easily travel 2 weeks out of 4 weeks in a month. Um, and I have that backup in case that is an assumption or a hesitation that you have. It is extremely important to upfront address any assumptions that you're making. So if you think that the organization is not sure about it because you're a woman, or if you can't travel, address that in the interview. Tell them that, hey, I can travel, I have traveled, I have XYZ support system at home that will allow me to do it. This is my interest. And if I am interested in something, I go all the way to do it. I don't let other circumstances hinder me. And then give a few examples of that. That's the only way you can build trust in the employer that you will do what is asked when necessary. Again, Meera has a question related to years of experience. She asks, companies always consider people with less experience. How about people with more than 12 to 15 experience? There is a lot of and I'm going to come back to ageism and how the industry has a lot of conversations that are going on about, we talk about discrimination when it comes to gender, about LGBTQ, about people with disabilities, but we don't talk about age. So that conversation is on the rise, so hopefully it'll get easier in the future than now. But for now, it is, like I mentioned before, the biggest reason there is a hesitation is because someone with 12 to 15 years of experience comes into the role. They see people with 5 years of experience at the same level, and they get a little uncomfortable with the situation. So you need to head on address it, saying that, hey, I know I might have more experience than what you're looking for, but I am definitely super interested in the role. I'm willing to do what is required, and stay in that role for as long as required, right? Again, take the conversation towards how you are a good fit for that role. If you do that, uh, most organizations are willing to overlook 12 to 15 years of experience where 5 would do. I have seen organizations where we've had people of all ages within the same team doing similar work, and they have gotten along well. There are also instances where we have the same kind of diversity and they don't get along well. So it is a gamble, but a lot of organizations are more and more willing to take it. So the other part is, if the organization advertises itself as being a young working place and having like only young people in the team, stay away from those organizations or teams. The next question says, what are the important things to be put under personal details in a resume? Is adding address, date of birth, marital status necessary, and what other details to be added? In your resume, do not add any of these details. Like, the only personal details that your resume really needs is your phone number, your email address, and yeah, that is it. Like, your educational background. So you can have your name, email address, phone number all on top, then straight away jump into your career achievements, like your chronological order of timeline of where you worked and what you've done, and end with your educational background. No other personal information. You don't need to add your address. You don't need to add your marital status, gender, date of birth. All of those are not required. And yes, when you're coming to a resume, it helps to for it to be a very crisp 1 or 2 pager. If your resume is longer than 2 pages, then it is not a good resume. Find a way to cut things out. There is always excess that you can trim. You can play around with the format, but ideally, it should be a single page, both sides at max. But yeah, I'm happy to see the number of questions. I think the entire interview process begins by having an extremely strong resume. I'm glad that questions are even going as far back as writing resumes. Coming to resumes, Divya asks, are there any tools that will help in writing a better resume, or at least one which will rate my resume on a scale? I'm not aware of any tools, but what you can do is look online for resumes. You'll see a lot of sample resumes. And sometimes a resume stands up to the extent, like I have been scanning resumes and I've seen some really good ones that I actually save on my desktop and say, when I recreate my resume or if I think of changing the format, this is what I want it to look like. So I think look online, you'll see a lot of formats and try and pick the format that works best for you. Again, the important thing is to trim as much fat, make it very crisp. You don't need a lot of white space on your resume. So those are the few tips. But yeah, I think the internet these days has a lot of examples. Momita asks, hi, I'm currently looking for job post career break. How to get the resume reviewed? How can I show the career break on the resume? So you again, if you're doing chronological order of how you're listing your work experience, you don't have to explicitly mention your career break. So if you've been working from 2010 to 2012, you say 2010 to 2012, this organization, this is what I did in that organization. If you've taken a break from 2012 to 2015, your next thing will anyway start from 2015 to 2018, for example. And that's if you've taken a break somewhere in the past. If you've taken a break now, again, you don't have to explicitly mention it. Just say 2010 to 2012, this is what I've been doing, and that is your last chronological uh, order in the resume. What is important in this is that you write a cover letter. I know the concept of a cover letter is a little rare these days, but it is a good, the resume is not where you explain why you took a break or why you're coming back to the industry. The cover letter is where you do that. So write a cover letter, say that this is the role, I'm super excited in it, I took a break for X reason, and this is why I'm willing to come back, and this is why I'm the best fit for the role. So these are the things that you put in cover letter. Your resume needs to stay clean, talk about chronological order of achievements and where you worked. I'm gonna quickly take a look. I think we have time for about one last question. I take quickly scan through and see if there's something that I've missed or something that I should talk about. I think I've covered most of it. The most uh, often asked question, I think, is how do we ace an interview about a career break? My tips for that would essentially be quickly go on to find which organizations have these specific programs where they're looking for people who have taken a career break. There are a lot of programs coming on like this. The competition is extremely hard, but I'm sure if you've done your due diligence, if you've kept up with the industry during while you've also been on break, you're definitely gonna make it. So that's what we had for today. I'm gonna sign off. Per usual, if you have any questions, we can stay in touch. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to help in any way that I can. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye bye. Thank you.